So, over the past couple days, I became a PoE2 doomer. What happened? Did I finally look over Reddit? Did I open Twitter and scroll for a bit? Have I been reading the YouTube comment section? No, none of the above. Actually, I've just been experimenting a bit with Impending Doom and Doom Blast. And so far, it's pretty fun. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk about some of the mechanical interactions that I've encountered with the skill, go over my experiences playing it, and then leave you off with some ending thoughts. Now, this is not a build guide. I'm not going to be going over everything in detail, though I will be talking about a few very specific or key changes that I made to my character. Also, I'm thinking of doing a few more of these, where I explore some other skills, probably using the same mana stacking Archmage framework that I already have set up, and really focusing in on the skill's mechanics, so things like Arc or maybe even Hex Blast. If that sounds interesting to you, then do be sure to let me know down below. Along with any other skills that you think are cool and want to see explored this way, then get subscribed and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the video when it comes out. And hey, maybe leave a like while you're down there. But for now, let's get into things. Because what is Impending Doom? Well, it's a special type of support, specifically for curses, like say Conductivity. Trigger Doom Blast when curses from supported skills expire. Now, I thought expire meant the curse's duration reaches its endpoint. So, initially, what I was doing is trying to lower curse duration to force it to expire. Turns out there's some other interesting stuff you can do, though. In terms of damage scaling, Impending Doom deals base chaos damage equal to 15% of your current mana. Now, it does have a short cooldown and 3 uses. I have yet to feel like this skill ever has a cooldown, because at 0.15 seconds, it is really darn hard to run out of cooldown charges. Like, really hard. It probably could happen, especially if you're doing stuff like spell cascading, assuming that they actually don't just use one charge for all 3 and use 3 different charges. I have not explored that too much because I can't find anywhere in the game's UI where it's actually tracked currently. Makes it a little hard to test that stuff. If you happen to know where it's tracked or how to see it, let me know down below how that works. But what makes things really interesting is Cursed Ground support, where the supported skill creates Cursed Ground, and enemies count as cursed while on the ground. This is really important if you, say, use the Spell Cascade support. You have 3 Cursed Ground explosions that appear. The problem is, Cursed Ground says you can have a maximum of 1. 2 are immediately removed. This counts as the curse expiring on enemies, thus triggering Doom Blast. So, basically, any way that you can use to remove the Cursed Ground will trigger Doom Blast on all the affected enemies. Spell Cascade's one way. That's how I prefer for mapping. Another way that I prefer for bossing is Spell Echo, which I really should have taken out. Oh, I did take out. Here we go. I just didn't have it in my inventory. So, Spell Echo, on the other hand, works like this, where it creates a circle and then a second circle. So as the second circle appears, the first one is removed, thus triggering all the curses. Technically, you don't need either of these. I can just do this, and every time I am recasting, it is removing the circle. To demonstrate all this, and kind of show you in practice, it's time to fire up a map. Sure, this one. This is a good map. And what map do I just want to open? Sure, Hive. I don't really feel like running Hive anyway. So here we go. I put the curse on the enemies, and because the cursed ground persists, they don't take any damage. The minute I cast it here, oh, the curse got removed. Doom Blast. Also, if enemies move out of the circle, curse gets removed. Doom Blast. So that's how that works, and you can do this incredibly rapidly by spamming the skill and kind of destroy everything on your screen. But the coverage isn't exactly great. It's just everything within the circle. Also, you have to cast the skill twice, so this is where something like Spell Echo comes in. Where now, you'll notice it's going off automatically. I don't have to cast twice. This is because when the second circle spawns replacing the first, it counts as the first being removed, since Cursed Ground says you can only have a limit of 1. And for bossing, I've found Spell Echo to be the best way to do it. But for mapping, Personally, I prefer Spell Cascade. And if you've messed around with Impending Doom, please let me know down below. What do you prefer? No support at all and manually double casting? Do you prefer using Spell Echo while mapping, or do you prefer Spell Cascade? The reason I like Cascade is you still get the instant triggers, and it has much better coverage because of the off-axis spawns. So, that is the basics of Impending Doom and some of the skill's mechanics. So, how do you scale Impending Doom damage? Well, it deals base chaos damage equal to 15% of your current mana. The higher your maximum mana, the higher your current mana can be. In other words, right now, my current mana is 5,845. I cast my skill, goes down very slightly, but because I have enough regen, it immediately recovers. For this reason, I would say that inspiration support is mandatory, and you can even use a low-level curse skill. This will affect the amount of resistance shred you apply with your curse, so it won't shred enemy resistance as much. But what it will not affect is the Doom Blast damage, since Doom Blast is a support that scales off of your maximum mana, rather than a spell skill or something like that that scales off of gem level. This also means that spell skill level and stuff on gear does not really help the Impending Doom, though it might help a secondary setup, such as if you're using Cast on Shock Lightning Conduit or Orb of Storms because you want to boost your damage even more. There are a few other ways to scale the skill. The first would be Area of Effect. The more AoE you have, the more the Impending Doom explosions overlap. This won't really help on single target, but it is really good for clear. In addition, Impending Doom is a triggered skill. So, triggered skill damage, which tends to roll higher than regular spell damage modifiers, that do also apply. Not only is it always going to apply to Impending Doom, but it's a really good way to get in extra damage. And if the cooldown does become an issue, you're able to use charges so fast that it exceeds the base generation rate, then cooldown recovery speed is another good way to scale the skill. Then, if we assume an Archmage setup, you can, of course, scale the lightning damage portion with increased lightning damage. You can scale both the lightning and chaos with increased spell damage. You can scale the chaos portion with percent increased chaos damage. You can lower enemy lightning resistance, or you can wither them so that they take increased chaos damage. So now, let's come take a look at the passive tree and go over a couple of the things I did. First up, I dropped all the spark stuff. This is not a projectile, and skill factoration doesn't help it. So, all that's gone. And instead, I took some AoE nodes. Doom Blast is an AoE spell, so increased area of effect, and also I wanted to maximize the AoE on my curse to apply the Doom Blast to as many enemies as possible. In other words, I wanted to use Zone of Control, which gives a massive area of effect for curses. Having them hindered with a 15% reduced movement speed isn't too bad either. I also dropped Lightning Rod from the setup. So, Lightning Rod says, non-critical hits is lucky. In other words, the damage range rolls twice, and it takes the best result. For a skill like Orb of Storms, that has a huge damage range, this is really good. But Impending Doom and Doom Blast says, deals base chaos damage equal to 15% of your current mana. My understanding here is, this has no damage range. It is just 15% of whatever this number is. So 15% of 58, 45, is 876 base damage. The only way it goes up is if I get more max mana. The only way it goes down is if I get less current mana. Pretty simple. It also means that something like Mana Remnants and Mana Overflow could be a really cool way to play this build. Now, so far, I have not min-maxed this character in any way, shape, or form. I've really just taken it into a few maps and messed around with both single target and AoE. For single target, I did T4 Zesht. And honestly, it wasn't that much slower than Spark, which is probably because on T4 Zesht, most of my damage is coming from the Lightning Conduit procs, which I did keep on, rather than the damage my skill is doing. On the other hand, during mapping, it felt very different from Spark. Spark kind of covers the entire screen, but I did notice that the damage directly on enemies is a little bit more responsive with Impending Doom. So, for example, in regular T15 maps, I was blasting through pretty darn quickly, and I was able to do league mechanics like Breach and Expedition very easily. But the actual amount of damage that Spark does ramps up really nicely. as you keep casting and casting, there are more and more sparks just bouncing around and hitting enemies. So, in the most challenging content like a Delirious map, this felt notably slower as opposed to Archmage Spark. Which gets to the slightly unfortunate thing about this whole setup, and that is, I do think if you are playing Impending Doom, whether it's now or in the future, you really should be Archmage. Your damage is already scaling off of max mana. You also don't get easy access to a lot of scalers, such as other skills do. And so, how strong this is going forward is probably going to depend on how strong mana stacking and Archmage is. That said, it's a pretty cool archetype. I've definitely had fun with it. I do like how good the AoE feels with Spell Cascade while mapping. The single target wasn't all that bad either. If the question is simply, what's better, this, Spark, or Fireball, I would say this is about on par with Fireball. Though, admittedly, that could be because I have significantly better gear than when I played Fireball, but it's definitely worse than Spark, which is unsurprising considering Spark is, at least as we're recording this video, the most dominant meta spell skill. But hey, as it turns out, being a Doomer in PoE 2 is pretty darn fun, and it was definitely a nice break from the Spark gameplay. So after this, I'm going to try Arc. I kind of want to see how many crazy chains I can get, and I'm going to try Hex Blast. I did try Hex Blast once before, and I was kind of annoyed by the target cap, so I'll see if I can do anything to potentially change that up a bit. But for now, thank you very much for watching to the end. If you want to know more about the Spark version of this character, then do check out the build showcase that I did up in the card and down below. On the other hand, if there's another skill that you think is really cool and has a lot of potential with this kind of setup, then let me know down in the comments and who knows, maybe you'll see it in a future video. Also, if you have any experiences with Impending Doom, please do share them down below. For now, thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.